Thanks for tuning in to the Trap House Podcast. Now, a quick word about our sponsors. We have Duke Traps. Check out duketraps.com. Duke manufactures over 40 different models of cage traps, coil spring traps, long spring traps, and body grip style traps. Also, my personal favorite, they have the Duke dog proofs. They come powder coated, perfect on the line. Check out duketraps.com and you won't be disappointed. We have J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags Bracket, all American made products. Check out their website, j3o.com, and you will not be disappointed. They have everything from your bait holders, your spring clips, your tail hooks, the universal locks, the list goes on. Especially if you're a water trapper, you want to check this website out. That's j3o.com. We also have Top Lot Stretcher Company with us. Check out their website at toplotstretcherco.com. Top Lot Stretcher Company handles all your wooden stretcher needs, along with pelt handling supplies and trapping supplies. Check out their website at toplotstretcherco.com. And representing all the girls in the trapping world, we have Trapping Girl Inc. with us. Check out their website, trappinggirlinc.com. They have awesome apparel for the females. There's also kids apparel, lures and baits, things you could use out in the field. Check out their website, trappinggirlinc.com. And there's only one true way to start out the trap line in the morning, and that's with a nice hot cup of coffee from traplinecoffee.com. Check out their numerous collections. They have Trapline Blend, a Kodiak Blend, and my favorite, a Cherry Red Blend, all available at traplinecoffee.com. Also, be sure to check out Weeby Knives. That's weebyknives.com. They have skinning knives, fleshing knives, all your fur handling tools. Check out weebyknives.com. Need a place to sell your fur? Check out Groenewald Fur and Wool Company. They're the largest and most experienced direct receiver of wild fur with over 50 plus years of experience. Their website is gfwco.com. And last but not least, Hoosier Trapper Supply. Check out our website, HoosierTrapperSupply.com, home of the Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. We got all your trapping needs, trapping scents and baits, deer scent, and apparel. Check out HoosierTrapperSupply.com. All right, everyone, welcome back to another Trap House podcast. We got a great guest today. Dave Scifres is with us. And if you don't know the man, he's a trapper. He's does a lot of different things. And we're going to basically just chat about trapping. How could you go wrong, you know?
Perfect.
Yeah. Dave, can you kind of start at the beginning, though, of how you really got involved in this? What kind of drew you to trapping? I know you do nuisance work and a bunch of other stuff, but
Yeah, I've always had a love for wildlife, and mom and dad bought me a little field guide uh, when I was probably junior high age, and I would every animal I saw, I would mark that book that I had, all the different birds and mammals, and we'd go on vacation. I'd be checking those off. So it just started with a love for wildlife, and trapping was a way to be closer to it and really live that life. So uh, I started trapping down the road from our house. We lived right at the edge of town, and had a man that went to church with us, and he had a farm down there and muskrats in the creek. And so I had some success there with a buddy of mine. And then another farmer that went to church also had raccoon issues, raccoons eating his chickens. So we'd ride our bikes all the way out there. It'd be about a mile out in the country. And, at sixth grade or junior high age level, you wouldn't want to do that with kids today, but that's how I got started into it. And then mom would take me out a little bit farther out of town. And so I was trapping from, I think it was 1967, maybe I started. Well, it's been a few years ago.
yeah. There's a lot of people that somehow, like, uh, we hear the stories all the time. Muskrat's always a great, intro to trapping. People start there, and just build. Um,
Yeah, with my interest in wildlife, we were wading in the creek and seeing the different minnows and things. And one day we jumped a mink, and it ran. That's before we ever started trapping, and that mink kind of got me fired up a little bit, just trying to learn more about it.
Yeah.
So I so I trapped all through high school, and then I didn't go to college. I thought I knew everything already, so I you know how that goes. And I went to the fur taker college though in 1980, the very first one out in Pingree Park, Colorado. So that was a good experience for me. Our local fur taker chapter, I'm a member of Chapter 17, which Louis and Carol Cromweddy started way back in the 60s. And then we had a chapter in Central Illinois that I was active in. And at the when the fur boom crashed, that kind of dissolved. But Louis' chapter is still going strong, and I'm actually an officer in that one now. So, but been active in fur takers for a while. I had a little bit of a break after the crash. I also was a meat cutter for years, so I started processing deer at my home, and those deer would come so heavy that I just didn't have time to trap for probably about 10 years in there. And one day my wife looked at me and she said, why don't you go trapping and quit doing the deer? And man, that's all it took. And I've been trapping like a madman ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it all happens at the same time. The best time to be in the woods is, the perfect storm to be working.
The one thing that saved me right after the crash, opening day of uh, archery season, I no, it was opening day of trapping season, and I was cutting up deer, and it was pouring down rain though, and I thought, well, it's easy not to go today, you know.
Right.
So I didn't trap that day, or didn't trap for quite a few years there after that. But man, once I got back into it, I got hooked big time.
Yeah.
We kind of deal with the same thing because since we do taxidermy, we've got that 2 or 3 weeks that are just there's deer coming in and it's pretty intense, and they need to be, we don't do processing, but they got to be caped out, so it's tough to do much else other than what your immediate responsibilities are, so we can certainly relate to that. A lot of people say, I'd love to do what you guys do, but I'm like, well, if you want your free time during the time of year that you enjoy the most, you might reconsider. So, but
Yep, yep. Even now with my nuisance work, sometimes I'd rather go fishing, but I've been around a lake before, trapping muskrats or beaver in the spring, and you could just see the bass in the shallows, and I think, oh man, those would be so easy to catch right now. And then I think to myself, would I rather fish or would I rather trap? Uh, I'd rather trap, so here I am trapping,
Yeah.
but I still want to fish.
so back in those days, Dave, how did you market your fur back in the 70s and
Well,
80s?
uh, Priority Fur and Wool Company was in Farmington, Illinois, and they bought the pelts, and they would buy whole animals at that time. So my mom and my grandma would drive me and my buddy over there, before we could drive. And then after I grew up a little bit, uh, the Fur Taker chapter, Bob Himmel, Lindy Himmel, J.B. Martin invited me down. J.B. was buying some fur down in Topeka, Illinois, and they invited me down there to their shop to teach me how to process the fur. So then I started processing and sending a lot of it to NAFA at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Dominion Sodak. Dominion Sodak was what it was called at that.
Right. Right. Yeah, which was part of the original Hudson Bay Company. Of course, those names, all that changed, but yeah, I didn't know if you ever dealt with Ed Bauer Fur Company or. Okay.
Bauer. Always heard the name, but it was just a little farther south for me, and it didn't make it down that far.
Right. Right. It's they were a major force in those days. Of course, that all fell apart when the market fell apart too. But yeah, they were a major buyer.
So how long have you been doing the nuisance work?
Well, I kind of did beaver work for quite a while. Just we don't have a lot of beaver, so but I would get called often when the beaver showed up, and we had a local company that nuisance wildlife company that would refer the beaver work to me, and we become friends. The Wetsteins in Eureka, Illinois. Uh, Josh and I are pretty good buddies. We talk today, and so I'll refer a lot of work to him that I don't do, and then they refer some work to me that they don't do. So I kind of got in doing beaver work a little bit, and then somebody'd have a raccoon in an attic, or somebody'd have coyotes maybe coming through their yard. So I just got into a little bit of it, just kind of slowly. And then with the mole work, I could do that after work. So my wife would ride with me after work, and there was I retired in November, and the couple years before that, the business was growing while I was still working full time, and I had quite a few responsibilities at my work. But I'd leave, and we would go run traps till 9 o'clock at night until it was dark, and she'd go with me every single night. So now that I'm retired, I'm doing it earlier in the morning, and she doesn't go quite so often.
That's great.
So what was you were relaying a pretty crazy story with the raccoon um, last year, and I thought or the year before, I don't remember exactly when. So you want to tell that story?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of them.
Okay, well, we got time for both.
Yeah.
Well,
Good trapping stories.
the story on that was had two young girls. They were in their 20s, and they lived in an apartment or in a rental house in Peoria, Illinois, which is just 10 miles from me. And they when they called me, they said they had a raccoon living in their attic, and now they were hearing lots of purring and chirping, and so I knew they had pups up there. So they had them since this was in June, and they just, maybe late May. But so the pups were, probably 6 weeks old when I was there. Anyway, I did a inspection of the property, and there was a gable end vent that you could see the smear marks through the raccoons have oil on their skin, and they'll leave the sebum marks as they go through the vents or that type of thing. It's pretty easy to spot them. Found the downspout that it was going up. Well, I stopped my inspection at that point because I knew where I was getting in. I missed one spot on the back side of the house where a window well was also broken. The glass was out of that. So they had another entry through the bottom also. And so I did the internal inspection and couldn't find anything in that attic at all. So I I decided we'll try to evict them with I use the eviction. I make a eviction fluid I call eviction slime. It's boar glands and other ingredients that make it sticky, and I'll apply it on the entries where the female will get that on her. And the theory behind this is the raccoons, a boar raccoon will kill the pups in order to get that female to rebreed again. And I had two instances this summer where I found dead pups on roofs that the boars had killed. Anyway, I applied the eviction fluid to the entry hole that I found, and she'll get that on her skin. And then I also play a recording of two male raccoons fighting. So it's a lot of real intense growling, and it's pretty intense. But I always play that from outside the house with a remote. Well, I felt like it was taking me a long time to set this up, and I had a pull down attic door. Let me back up for just a minute. The refrigerator in that same little room had been opened twice, and the raccoon had eaten food out of the refrigerator. They sent me pictures of that. And they sent me a video of the bathroom light pointing up at that light, and you could hear the pups chirping in there. Well, what I didn't realize, I there was a lot of sign in the attic. A lot of raccoons had been in the attic. But what I didn't realize, right behind where I was standing, I'm facing these girls. I've got the ladder pulled down. Right behind me was an access panel, and I saw that the the face was off of that, but I assumed the female was coming down somehow through the wall and getting in there. Well, she was underneath that bathtub with the pups. The cast iron tub was projecting that sound up. So they did have raccoons in the attic originally, but when I got there, they were underneath that tub. So I had my back to that spot, and I had just taken my gloves off after applying the eviction fluid, and I turned them inside out and stuck them in my back pocket. And I put the recorder up on the step of the attic access, and I reached up to turn it on. And I remember I just wanted to look at those girls' faces. Another mistake I made, they should have never been in the house, but it won't happen again. So I reached up and I turned that knob on that thing, and those girls' eyes got as big as saucers, and they screamed and took off running. And about that time, the raccoon hit me from behind and bit me right on my butt cheek and butt knocked me down. I spun around instantly. I mean, just instantly. I was wearing slip-on shoes, and that raccoon, when I spun around, it was already in the air with its mouth open. And I'm a terrible basketball shot, and I can't throw a pitch. But when I kicked that raccoon, I nailed it perfectly right there. It was in the air with its mouth open, and I got it right there and flipped it end over end, and it had diarrhea all over the wall as it was flipping. I can remember it. It's like in slow motion. It hit the floor and came right back at me again. It did it like 2 more times, a total of 3 charges at me. And I finally got it backed up. The whole time my bike gloves are on the floor and my catch pole. And you got to remember, the whole time this is happening, that raccoon, that sound is just, I got it on high volume, just, and so it's pretty intense. But I finally got it back into that access panel, and I was able to get my catch pole on it. Well, the next day, I called my wife then, and I said, she usually goes with me, but she was home then. And I called her and said, I said, I just got bit by a raccoon. I've got to go to the hospital. But first I need to come home and get some traps, because I got to try and catch the rest of these raccoons that are here. So I came home, we got her, and she rode with me, and we put the raccoon, the female, in a little area right there close to where that access panel was, and surrounded it with traps, and that'll usually draw those pups out. Either way, you can put a pup in there, or a female, either one, and use them for bait. Well, they didn't come out of there that night. So the guy from animal control had to, when you go to the hospital, it generates a report, and then you have to have that animal tested for rabies. So the animal control guy met me there, and he started walking up to that cage. And I said, that's the meanest raccoon I've ever been around. I said, you can take my trap and I'll stop by and get it later. He said, no, I do this all the time. That's okay. He got within about 4 feet of that trap, and that raccoon hit that cage and growled at him. And he turned and looked at me. He says, I think I'll take you up on your offer. I'll take that trap. So I got it back about a couple days later then. But it came back negative, and I assumed that it would. It was just the perfect scenario to make her believe that I was a boar raccoon and going to get those pups.
Right.
So, and the animal behavior aspect that I absolutely loved the whole thing, except for getting bit in the butt,
Man, I'd pay good money if you had that on camera.
Oh, it would have been great.
He would have went viral.
It wasn't so fun that night, but it was great. It was great. That's great.
Oh man!
So
tell the story again.
So did the girls get over the trauma of all this, or did they have to just move out?
Well, they moved out for a few days. They did, yeah. They moved out for a few days, and the guy that was renting to them, they had paid a whole month or a whole year in advance, and he wanted them to pay my fees. And so I called him up one day and kind of told him how I felt about it. I was polite and nice, but I was pretty firm, and telling him that, that could have been one of those girls that got bit in the house that he's renting to him. So
yeah,
I don't know how it worked out, but I tried to do my best to help them out.
So when they
I had another, go ahead.
when they started screaming and running out, is it because they seen the raccoon or is it because of the audio you played?
No, it was they saw it coming at me. And the first thing they said when they came back in the house, or I went out the door because they were coming back in. They the first thing they said was, when we got outside, we said we left him in there. And what were they going to do though?
He'll never
And
make it
first
out
thing
alive.
then she says, "Did you get bit?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Where at?" I said, "Right in the butt cheek." Yeah, if it had been over about an inch and a half, it would have hit my wallet. Never got me, but yeah, I got a pretty good little tattoo right there.
Oh man, that's a good one.
I had another one, and these were all when I kind of started doing my thing, you know, and I've learned a lot since then. On the first one, I should have never let those girls stay in there. I should have done a little bit better inspection, and I should have never played that sound when I'm in the same room. I mean, you know, it's effective. She believed the story that I laid out. She believed it, and she was going to attack the raccoon,
Right.
the male. So, but I had another one. Wasn't too far from that location. I had a raccoon pups in a chimney, and the house was very steep, and I wasn't going to climb that to put a positive set on it. So I found the downspout. It was going up, set traps, and first raccoon I caught was a male at that location. And then about the second or third night, I caught a lactating female. And I remember talking to my friend Dan Bro. He's helped me a lot on my nuisance wildlife work. He and Steve Beckman both have helped me out a tremendous amount. And but those guys, Dan said, just make sure you have the right female. He said that to me, and I said, okay, I'm pretty sure it's the right one. Anyway, I go in the house. I was working at the time, so I had to wait till 4:30 and head over there and get my tools and stuff. And I go in the house. I've got the female. I can hear the pups in there chirping, so I think, well, they're feeling abandoned. And they're making a lot of noise. So I got up underneath that chimney. It was an old, beautiful older home with oak and big oak table and oak hardwood floors. Just a gorgeous place. And I crawled up underneath there, and they had shoved a bat of insulation in there because they had bats come down that chimney one time. So the whole batting was up in there. So I started pulling, and it was like an hourglass, you know, like a sand. Uh, it just slowly started. All the debris that was up in there started falling, you know, and it just kept falling more and more. And I could hear them, and pretty soon a pup drops out. And then another pup drops out. They were probably 6 weeks old. They were maybe 8 weeks old. They were mobile, but not real mobile. And I think there were four of them hit the ground. And I reached down to grab them, and the whole thing came crashing down in a big puff of smoke. And there stood a female raccoon up with her back end up like they do, you know, when they're trying to be intimidating. And here I am in a strange house with a live raccoon, and it was so funny. It was like a Three Stooges thing. That raccoon didn't run under the table; it ran around it, and I chased it around like 3 times around the table, and then it ran up the stairs. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't lose sight of this thing because it could be in any room, and I'd never been in this house. So I ran to the top, and stuck my head over, and I saw it go into the bathroom or into a room. And I thought, okay, good. I got up there, I shut the door, and I could take a breath, you know, and relax for a minute. And the whole time, those pups are downstairs running around, you know. So I get in that bathroom, and that coon is behind the toilet, and I get the catch pole around its neck, and I start pulling it out. Well, I had it on the supply line side, and that raccoon starts pushing its hands up on that supply line, and I see the toilet move a little bit. Well, in my mind, your mind works really quick sometimes when you have adrenaline pumping. I could just see it like a cartoon picture where a toilet breaks off and the water's shooting up in the air, you know. Well, that's not going to happen, but that's what went through my mind. I let that cage off, or that cable off, real quick, and went on the other side. Well, there's a common theme to these stories. As soon as I put that on there and pulled it out, that raccoon started crap and diarrhea all over in that bathroom.
Oh, good.
And so that was another heck of a mess. But so I come down the stairs with this raccoon squalling like crazy. And this lady thinks I'm going in there to get these little tiny raccoons. She's sitting on the front step. And I come out the door, and that thing's just making all kinds of noise. And my wife was in the truck waiting for me. And I said, grab that cage out of the back. All I had was a Comstock in there. I didn't even have a regular cage because I was thinking I was going after pups that night. And I knew she couldn't set it. So I pinned the raccoon to the ground out in the front yard, and I handed it to my wife. And she's a city girl. And she says, I can't, David. I said, you have to. And I don't boss my wife around, but I did that in that situation. I handed her the pole, and she didn't pin it to the ground. It starts taking off with her. I said, pin it to the ground. Anyway, we finally got it in a cage, and then I said, grab that sack, and she came right in with me. She was just going right with me at that point, and then we gathered all those pups up, and that was one for the books. So anyway, I've had a couple of exciting ones.
So I got to ask, are you responsible for the cleanup then?
Well, since I didn't discuss it beforehand, I did the cleanup. Yep, I did it. I did it because I felt like I should.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't charge them anything extra. I felt like it was my mistake, and I didn't talk about it beforehand, so I just took care of it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, but I did.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you got the pups out of the running around the dining table.
Yeah, they were. One of them wanted to climb up the chimney. The other three were still on the ground there. So they were pretty mobile, but I was glad that I was able to round them up. Yeah, it's interesting sometimes.
You won't forget that.
Pardon me?
I said you won't forget that.
Oh no, we'll never forget that. A guy watches TV or something. What do you say about that? They don't have any fun.
No.
Man, I'm glad I'm not in the nuisance business.
I really enjoy it. I like I like helping people solve their problems, and I really enjoy meeting new people. So I've had a lot of fun doing it. It's been, I think I had 5 calls today. It's been pretty slow here lately, but I had 5 separate calls, and I'm running a little behind. So I'm going to run some after we get done tonight.
Okay. Well, that's good. You do a lot of mole work. Are you guys real dry? So when it gets real dry, there's not much going on with moles. Is that correct?
No, moles eat 80% earthworms, and they will eat grubs. But there was a study actually done in Indiana where they introduced moles into 2 areas, and one they had removed the grubs with grub treatment, and the other area was left with the grubs in it. And the moles will hunt the worms, but they'll pick up other arthropods and other insects and grubs in the soil as they're hunting the worms. So that is kind of a freebie that they get along the way. And they found that when they removed those grubs, that they would have more damage because the moles were hunting actually harder than they would without the grub in the soil. Yeah, or with the grub in the soil, I mean.
Yeah.
So they're moisture related. So it's real dry right now. So they're running deep and they're throwing up a lot of mounds. In a regular yard out in the country, like we have about 3 acres here. And if they come in my yard, there's an established run that's been there for years, and it's already underneath the ground. So when they come in my yard, they'll come in the same spots, and they're traveling, following pheromones or voids in the soil. And if you have a lot of old activity in your yard, they can travel under that old activity, and you'll never see a mound because they've already got that all cleaned out. They compact to the side, almost like a directional boring would do. They're compacting to the side. But when they want to run a lot, they have to bring that soil up. So the big mounds you see this time of year are because they have to go deeper to get to the worms,
Mm-hmm.
to get to the earthworms.
Mm-hmm.
And then about September, October, November, we'll start. They don't hibernate, so they're active all year round,
Right.
and they'll be so they have to dig deeper then too to get below the frost line.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll throw up a lot of big mounds then too. So I just have to work a little harder when it's dry because I have to dig down to the run. I use a probe to find their run, so I'm digging where you do it long enough, you kind of got an educated guess where that's going to be, and then you probe and you find it. And sometimes you, like drilling for oil, you find it sometimes, and sometimes you don't. You know what you want to find.
Yeah.
Sometimes the roots might be too bad in there, and you just kind of give up on that spot and move over a little bit. So, okay.
Yeah, I got
And moles
mounds.
are like, what's that?
Oh, I got mounds bad right now. I mowed the
Yeah.
other day, everything seemed fine, and I look out past 2 days, there's just hill after hill after hill. It's like, oh my God.
Well, sometime we get together, I'll show you what I do, and you can give it a try. I've always set a lot of traps. I set a lot of traps. I don't mess around. If I go into a yard and I've got a trap in the truck, I'm going to set every one I have.
Yeah.
Maybe not every one, but a lot.
Right. Hit it hard. Which trap do you use, Dave?
I use Victor out of sight if I can get them, and then I buy some traps from Wildlife Control Supplies. That's a similar version of that. It's they call it a scissor mole trap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got two like crab claws under the ground, and they push up on the treadle.
Right. The
There's
out of sights, they changed that trap, unfortunately, and the old ones, were the good
I
ones.
tried some of the new aluminum ones. I thought, well, they can't be as bad as what everybody says, but our soil's pretty heavy, and I need a really strong spring trap to break through it.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's gravity that locks a trap into the ground, but if you set a trap in our soil and I dig it all up so it's fairly soft, and you put it in there, even if it doesn't rain a week later, that thing is sunk in there. I mean, it's really solid, and it needs a strong spring on it to fire it.
Yeah. I mean, that the original out of sights, I mean, a lot of people use setters on those. I mean, that was a pretty stout trap. And the new ones.
Yeah, I'm using setters. I'm using setters for every one I set.
Yeah. And the new ones, you don't have to do that. So.
No, yeah, you can set those by hand. Yeah,
that was a disappointing whatever.
They don't have much value to me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a great design. The old style out of sight is the best trap made, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So switching gears, a few years ago, you sent me a video and you had caught, was it 5 coyotes or 6 coyotes?
Yeah, 5 coyotes. That was a pretty exciting day for me.
That was pretty cool. And that was, if I remember right, that was like in one of those waterway erosion control.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a grass waterway. And what the deal with that was, the lady, she passed away last year, but she was a real nice farmer lady. And she pulled in my driveway one day, and I had never met her before. And she heard that I trap coyotes and wanted to pay me to come trap coyotes. And I think that was about, oh gosh, maybe 2013, something like that. It's been a while ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said I'd come out and take a look at it. Well, I came out and looked at it, and it didn't look like much. And I said I'd come back and do it for her. Well, I think I went back that winter and caught 3, and then she called me again, wanted me, to do it again. There wasn't much value in them up until that point, so it might have been like 17 or something. And like 2011 before 13. But anyway, she'd had them coming, coyotes in her yard, and they would come through her yard every night. She had cats and dogs she was worried about. So I went in there, and I had been out to Johnny Thorpe, and one of his things that he tried to impress on me was setting up some type of a bait station to attract coyotes. And so that's one thing that I really took away because he said it more than once. And I had made a little bait station back there. And when I came back to check it a week later, there were coyote tracks everywhere. So I would normally not set 6 traps like that, but so I pre-dug my holes. In Illinois, we can't put a trap out ahead of time, but you can pre-dig and get everything ready for it. And so I went in that opening morning. It was during trapping season, and I set up 6 traps, and I got them in there pretty quick. I had already had holes dug, and so I got them in there pretty quick. And that was the first check. The next morning was there were 5 of them. It looked like a couple of does with fawns out there in that waterway. From I could see them from over 500 yards away, and then I could see them spinning around. And as I'm driving in, I counted them like 10 times by the time I got there. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was very awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I ended up catching 13 on her farm that year, and the day after that catch, the farmer she told him that we were trapping in there, not to go in and plow that field. Well, he plowed up 2 of those traps the next day, and then we got rain for a week, so I wasn't in there. I pulled traps and was out for a while, and then went back, but I ended up catching 13 off that waterway uh, that season.
Yeah. Hopefully that helped resolve her issues with them coming into the yard.
It did, but you know what I was learning at the time how much fruit that coyotes would eat. And at the same time that was going on with her, I was having coyotes showing up under my apple trees, and I had a neighbor call me and wanted to know what kind of trail he had going into his apple trees. Well, I went over there and looked at his place, and I could see a trail. It was pretty faint, and I thought I'm going to go home and get a trail camera and put on that trail, see what that is. And so I came home, got a camera, and on my way back there, I thought, I'm a trapper. I ought to be able to tell what kind of animal this is without a trail camera. I remember thinking that to myself. So I get over there and I thought, I'm going to set it up anyway. But I walked back down to that creek, and on the far side of that little tiny ditch was one coyote track. And then I set the camera up, and that was right before season, I think. And the coyotes were in there every night. Coyotes and possum, no coons. A coyote and a possum would come up there every day. Well, the farmer said to me, "What am I going to do with all those apples back there?" And I said, "There aren't any apples back there." He goes, "Well, yeah, there are. There's hundreds of them." I said, "Not anymore. They eat them. They ate them all." So those coyotes were in there every night eating those apples.
Yeah. So so that was what, September, October, or
That would have been yeah, right when the apples were falling.
Yeah.
September, October, and
Yeah.
maybe even in early November. I think he had a bunch of apples that weren't any good, and he just was letting them fall. But he was worried about cleaning it up, so they don't kill the grass. But they'd eat them all.
Yeah. It's interesting how the diet changes of coyotes. Of course, they're adaptable to about anything, and how their diet changes in the summer to and then fall, and they eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. And we had here at Justin's, we had a corn patch, and they were actually pulling ears of corn off and eating corn.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't necessarily think that they do that, but that they're total survivors, total opportunists. So pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think raccoons and coyotes are a lot alike. From what I see, they eat meat anytime they can, and they eat anything else when they can't get meat.
Yeah.
That's probably possums too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they eat meat when they get it, but they don't always get it.
Yeah. So
that's pretty neat, though.
Yeah.
At the same time,
So you good with talking about going to Johnny Thorpe's?
Yes, I guess we'll talk about it. Well, see, my wife, I love her dearly. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Her name's Therese, and she grew up in Oak Lawn, Illinois, which is Chicago. And so a lot of this stuff is kind of new to her, even though we've been married for quite a while, And uh, so we were going out there for the national convention in New York, and I had always seen these ads to uh, go on a trapping lessons with Johnny Thorpe. For years I'd seen those ads. So I thought, I was sitting on the couch one night and I said I wouldn't mind going and spending a day with Johnny Thorpe. Well, so I called him up and got it all set up, and we went up there. And you're in a small little town in upstate New York, and we're from farm country, and it's all heavy trees and his big old house, and then Johnny, you had a ponytail and just a character. You guys knew how he was, and it was just something that she wasn't quite ready for. So he had a room for us upstairs. It was nice and clean, but there was a faucet in the bathroom that just dripped, drip, drip, drip all night long. I couldn't get it to stop, and she wasn't going to sleep all night anyway. So it was pretty funny. But I went out for the day with him, spent a day with him riding around on his line, and I had a good time. It was fun.
Did
But
you
I'll never live that one down, having her stay at Johnny Thorpe's, and I think it was his 81st birthday that we were there.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Another one of those things I can tell a story about.
Yeah, I don't think he lived too much longer past that, did he?
No, I think we were there in August, and he passed away in November.
Okay.
November, December. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably I might have been the last person to ever take instruction from him.
Yeah. So for
Yeah.
all of you younger trappers that are listening to this, or younger listeners, Johnny Thorpe has been around since the 50s?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've read
Forever.
about him. Yeah, I read
Writing
about him when
articles.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was probably reading about him when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been a contributor to the magazines,
He wrote a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to tell you, the last time I saw him, I never really knew him, but the last time I saw him, it was at a fur taker convention in Indiana, Southern Indiana. I'm trying to remember the year. Probably early 2000s. I don't know. But anyways, he had like turquoise rings on every finger.
Yeah. Yeah. His house was like a museum with all the turquoise and the silver coins. And I mean, he had to have thousands of dollars worth of silver coins just laying there.
Yeah.
It was pretty neat. It was like being in an old time museum when you went through his house.
Well, he was kind of in the book that he wrote, kind of a biography was he was kind of into the treasure hunting stuff.
Yes, yeah, quite a bit. That whole room was set up with all the treasures that he'd found.
Mhm.
That museum type room. Yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah, I remember him. I believe I remember correctly that he actually had dug up some like old cannons from Revolutionary War. I mean, from years ago.
Yeah,
It was pretty.
he was as we rode around on his line that day we went out. He showed me places where he'd seen people like Art Crane and Pete Rickard, run into him on the trap line, and so those are names that I've heard for my whole life. So
Right.
It was really neat to be a part of that and see it. I'm glad I did it. My wife maybe not so much.
Well, he was definitely an icon. So yeah, he was.
Yeah, yeah, it was good.
And I don't know if he ever worked a regular job or not, but
I don't know if he did. He did have one catch out. I believe it was Arizona, I believe, but it might have been New Mexico. I think it was Arizona. He and a partner caught 702 or 704 coyotes out there one winter. That's a lot of coyotes.
That is very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Wow.
Yeah.
So riding around with him, what was like the main thing that you would say you took from it as far as instruction goes?
His car smelled like skunk.
So he was a trapper.
On the lighter side, yeah. he shared, picking locations. He would ask me to pick a location, and then he verified it. And I've been doing this a long time before I ever went to him, so I felt pretty confident on a lot of that kind of stuff. And oh, just a lot of little things. He talked about the lure making end of it a lot. And I asked him if he'd mind answering some of my questions. He didn't mind at all. He answered everything, I thought, pretty honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing was real revolutionary to me. I kind of thought I knew some of the answers to start with, but it was interesting.
So how did you get into lure making?
Well, I beaver trapping when I was a kid. I started, making lures for beaver mainly, and some ideas. And I also was a meat cutter, so I had meat byproducts for coyotes. I had blood, and I had bone meal, and I had liver, and I had all kinds of stuff to work with. And so that's how I kind of got interested in it. But the whole time I was working and raising a family, and didn't really have a lot of time to put into it. So now that I'm retired, I'm able to expand that a little bit. And I'm still working 12 hours a day sometimes, it seems like.
Yeah.
But I'm doing what I like to do.
Right.
I loved my job that I had, but I really like being self-employed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or fishing.
Yes.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I met you, is through conventions.
Yeah.
Through making lure. That was the first thing I noticed, what you had it out and stuff back in, I don't know when that was, but it's been a while now.
Yeah. I really enjoy it. It's another aspect of it, and I like, just like you guys, you love it when people catch stuff on what you guys make.
Yeah.
And go back to that catch of 5 coyotes. I was doing a lot of experimenting with coyotes at that time and lure making, but those 6 dirt holes, one of those had a bait in it that Johnny Thorpe had given me a jar of, and 2 of those holes had your top dog and Fixin' Elixir, another product that I bought from you guys when you came over to Illinois for a convention.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other stuff was my own stuff I made. So that that video might not have been possible without you guys.
We'd like to think that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I wish I would have narrated different, because the first trap that I came to there when I made that video was the coyote had exposed the pan on the first trap, and then I had 5 in a row after that. So that was I should have said something humorous or something about, oh darn it, I missed one.
Yeah. You're upset because you were caught 5 instead of 6.
Yeah. I had other coyote locations set up that day, probably about 10 spots, and I did catch a coyote. I caught one other red fox that day. So, I thought, oh, I'm gonna have a 10-day coyote day today, but it didn't happen.
So we got this thing, and I'm not superstitious or anything like that, but it does seem like if the very first place you check is really good, the rest of the day is probably not going to be so great.
I can believe it. Yeah. Yep. Do you ever go and check traps that maybe you think aren't going to be as productive first, so that you can have the catches at the end? I do. When I get out of the mole spot, I think I'm going to have them over there. So those are the last ones I want to look at instead of the first ones.
I don't know if I've ever done that specifically or not. That's not a bad idea, though.
Yeah. I think about it. Well, if you're running a long line like you guys are driving, you pretty much got to do it in the order you got it laid out.
Yeah.
But the moles are a lot like beaver. You have to get the last one, because 10 moles will tear up your yard and 1 mole will tear up your yard. So in beaver, it's the same thing. You have 6 or 8 of them in a lake or a stream, and you leave one of them, and everybody knows it's there still.
Yeah. I think, on the beavers like that, they're like the moles. I think you need to go in and set a bunch of traps right off the bat and get them caught as quickly as possible, because that straggler can be very difficult to get caught.
Yeah. And I'm catching a lot of them, snare a lot of them, and then also 330 channels. But
Mhm.
I don't use I never use any footholds anymore. It's
Oh,
all
okay.
snares or conibears.
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably haven't set a foothold for beaver for 10 years,
Oh, okay.
but just I set a lot of lake subdivisions. So I'm using snares and then taking a beaver out alive in a cage,
Okay.
dispatching it off site.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting. You got to get that beaver into the trap.
It's like a little rodeo
When they
going on.
start slapping that tail, it makes you know you're alive when you get a hold of one.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a rodeo. So have you ever caught one in a snare by the tail?
Yeah, I have. I have. Uh, it happens fairly often. I mean, now I can relate a story to you. I had a job where I had it was a an old gravel pit, an old borrow pit, and it had houses on 1/4 of it. 1/4 of it was apartment buildings. A fourth of it was bordering a highway with businesses, and they had a kids camp there that they were canoeing the lake. And then the other fourth was a company, a boating company that did boat repairs, and I was able to access that. I was hired by the homes on the east side, and on the south side was that company. And I went over there and introduced myself, and they let me access that way.
Mm-hmm.
But the beaver den was on the northwest corner, and real steep terrain to get down to it. So I just used lured snare sets and pulled them to me. But I think the wind was not right. It was out of the northwest. It was wrong for my location I had.
Mm-hmm.
I went ahead and set it up. I told the lady that hired me, I said, I don't know if we'll have any luck tonight, but 2 nights from now, the wind is supposed to change. I think I caught a beaver and a beaver. And then when that wind changed, I caught 2 beaver. And so uh, I pulled in the following morning, and there was a beaver swimming by one of my sets. And I watched it swim right up to I had cut a channel in and made my snare set. In Illinois, we have to have our loop half underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually dig a channel out and set my snare in that half, and then I make a slide up, and my lure's up 2 or 3 feet above the set. So I watched this beaver pull up and go right through that snare. And I thought, it's going to lock up any minute. He marked that for about 5 minutes. And it was before work in the morning. I had to get to work, but I'm just really interested in watching this. And he came down, went right through the snare again. And I was waiting for him to hang up again. And he just kept on swimming. And he looked big. He looked like he was 40-pounder, but I'd already caught the 2 adults. So I assumed it was a 2-year-old. And it was before the pups were born for that season. So they weren't real large 2-year-olds. But I went over there, and the tracks went right through that snare. And so I made this a little bit smaller loop, and I just changed the lure up. I don't even think I would have had to have. But the next morning I had it then, and that was number 5, and that ended the job.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see where if a beaver went through the loop like that and then just wagged his tail at the end, you could catch him by the tail.
Yeah.
I always assumed that they were swimming up to it and turning and catching it. But I think sometimes I making too big a loop.
Yeah.
When you're doing nuisance work, you just want to catch them. You don't care where you catch them. So a
Right.
lot of our catches will be midsection on a beaver all the way through. And when they hit the belly, the wider part, that'll fire that snare.
It's interesting, Dave. At the Trappers College, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, roughly. They gave all the classes like 3 trail cameras to put out on sets, and then they were going to show the good ones as part of the instruction, the evening instruction.
Yeah.
And one of the classes had set a beaver snare. It was up on the bank. We were allowed to do that. And that beaver was caught by the tail, but it actually had just walked through the loop and then got caught by the tail. And it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't, and that it just sat there and walked around till the next morning. But
yeah,
but yeah, it that kind of was that answer to that? Did he back in, or did they go through it, or whatever? And that particular one went through it as well and ended up getting caught by the tail.
Yeah, I think that probably happens more than I thought it did before. And
Mhm.
I run a lot of I run a lot of cellular cameras too.
Mhm.
I so they can keep me up at night because it's fun to see what's happening, you know.
Yeah.
But I had a spot just over a couple miles, and you know, at 10 o'clock at night when that camera goes off, I have turned notifications off because I've got 8 cameras now and it'd be dinging all the time. But so if I wake up at midnight or something and to get a drink of water or something, and I got to look at the camera, though I can't help it, and you see him being caught. Now I did have I had one situation where I caught a beaver about 2 months ago. There's a local winery that had beaver get into their pond, and it was just a single. But I set up snares. I put 2 snares on each side, so I had either wind covered, and I didn't even know where the lodge was. That's the neat thing about snaring with a lure. You don't have to find the lodge. You don't have to go down those steep banks. You can bring them closer to the truck if you want, as long as your wind helps you out. And but I caught a beaver that first night, and no other set was hit. And usually, if there's a beaver there, even if they don't get caught, you're gonna tell that they were at your set. They'll mark over the top of it. But so I went out there at morning, at just a little after daylight, and took care of the beaver, reset the snare. Well, later that afternoon, I looked at my cameras, and I had a group of 2 men and a bunch of boys. It happened to be Father's Day that day, and they were all over those snare sets, walking up and down on both sides of the lake. And you know, if I had 330 set there
Yeah.
or big footholds, I'd have been really nervous about it. But I didn't even go out there. I knew it was going to be okay.
Mhm.
So that's one reason I like using them.
Yeah. There's
Sometimes
uh,
oh
nuisance trapper here, the Hancock style suitcase traps or whatever, they refuse to use them just because the liability on those is so great.
oh yeah,
If a kid
I
got,
can see that.
yeah, so
Another thing I've had a limited success with, but my success is uh, only because I've only used it limitedly, is big cage traps, just a 15 by 15 by 32-inch trap with the lure in the back of that catch trap with leaves. And by running the cameras on it, I was able to see what I was doing wrong. Uh, you know how sometimes people will say, "Oh, animal be so smart that he's not going to go in the cage." Well, in this case, the beaver was so dumb he couldn't find the opening. He stayed at the back where my lure was the whole time. He wouldn't go around the front because he wanted that lure, and he was already as close as he could get to it. You know,
mhm.
so by using some fencing along with the cage, the next job I had, I caught. It was amazing. My son was home, and he went with me. We set up 2 cages with the fencing in front of it, 2 sections of fence on the side and 1 section of fence in the middle. And so the lure was back here, and they had to a beaver swimming along. When he hits that fence, he's got 2 openings, and they both are cage traps.
Mhm.
And then I put some scent up on the wind also, and we drove around to the other side of the lake and received a phone call, and already had a beaver like 15 or 20 minutes after we set it up. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Those are always nice. Catch them early.
so then we went out to eat with a live beaver in the back of the truck.
A big rodent.
Yep.
So, hey, going back to the Trappers College, you were at the very first one in 1980, the one that was in Colorado.
Yes.
So who were the instructors? I know Major Boddicker was there.
Major Boddicker was the main driver in it. My instructor was Kelly Peterson out of Wisconsin,
Okay.
and then let's see, Keith Gregerson was there doing the snaring
Okay.
part of it. George Stewart was an instructor that I got to bunk with as a student. Byron Dungy and Byron was from Illinois here from our Fur Taker chapter. the two of us bunked with George, and so even after George has talked about coyote trapping all day long, then he's got to go back and try and go to sleep over, still asking him about coyotes. But he was a true gentleman. He was great to get to know at that college. And then trying to think who else was there. He was president of the Colorado Trappers Association. Marvin Miller was an instructor. John Soho, he was an instructor. Yeah, it was a fantastic week. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody you talk to that's been there will never forgets the week at the Trappers College. You know,
Yeah,
that's what 43
yeah,
years 43 years ago. So yeah,
yeah. And I still can remember that. I can remember guys' faces and maybe not names so much, but it was great. Getting back to the camp and seeing what everybody had caught, and
yeah.
yeah, it was. I caught a coyote up there in the Rocky Mountains, so that was kind of fun.
Oh yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Well, Dave, we appreciate you being on and sharing the stories.
Yeah, thanks for listening. If I'm not
Got
trapping, nothing I'd rather do than talk about it.
yeah. You got big plans for this season? Anything out of the ordinary, or just trapping around home?
Little bit of fur trapping, but I'm trapping every day right now, and it's almost like uh, I don't need to get that outdoor fix as much. I really enjoy the beaver trapping down on the river, so I'll do some of that, and then I get invites to go with people on their trap line. Larry Bear is a local guy, and he's asked me to go with him, and Bobby Collins is a good friend of mine. We talk about every day, and he's invited me to come down there to his place, and Lindy Himmel down on the Illinois River. So I'll go with some of those guys just for fun, since the prices aren't good, and enjoy it. Hey, I have one more quick story to tell you. What not to do.
Okay.
My wife, like I said, I love her dearly, and she puts up with a lot of stuff. Her name's Treese. I think I told you. Anyway, like I said, the common theme, she's back. She's from Chicago. And oh shoot. I lost you for a minute there. Timed out. Anyway, we went out to dinner the other night, took my dad and his friend out for dinner. And I got done. We drove out to see our place. We had a barn reside, and Dad wanted to see it. So my wife stayed here, and I ran them back into town. And I had one mole job there in town, and I thought I'll just swing by there and check that real quick while I'm here. And I caught one mole, so I put it in the bucket in the back of the wife's car. And the next 2 days were 100 degrees here, and I forgot about that mole in the car. And and I don't know if you guys have ever smelled a mole, but they're worse than anything. And yeah, anyway, moles usually about this long by about this big around. But this one was like a roll of sausage when I found it. She didn't take her car anywhere for 2 days, so it sat in the garage.
Oh man.
So anyway, I'm lucky she loves me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's way worse than the guy that's concerned about being at the Trappers Convention with the family and buying lure and carrying it home, and they will wait till later. But that's got that beat any day.
It was pretty. So don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a common theme. I have a lot of things I tell people not to do.
Well, that's generally how you learn. So it's just,
Yeah.
The thing is, Dave, you just don't want to do it twice.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. Try to do it one time and be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Dave. Well, I'm sure we'll see you sometime soon. So thanks for being on.
I'll be over in Illinois in 1st of October. I might see you there. So
okay.
At the
All
Illinois
right.
State Trappers. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys. Enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.